The EFF heads to its elective conference in December. The recent exodus of senior leaders has led to massive public speculation, with some party members even engaging in discourse around prospective candidates for party leadership. Following Floyd Shivambu's departure, speculation around Newzroom Nthoba being tipped as a preferred candidate for the role of deputy president has intensified. The EFF also lost its position as the third largest party to the MK party at the polls in May. What would be most sound strategy going into the elective conference next month? Politics commentator and lecturer at the Central University of Technology, Leeto Nthoba, joins me now for more on that chat. Nthoba, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this morning. Maybe let's just start off with all the headlines that have been making the rounds on newspapers with regards to Newzroom Nthoba and possibly being put out of the elective conference that's set to take place next month. Is this anything to go by, especially with also just the social media commentary around whether or not he is still in the EFF?
I think, Newzroom Nthoba has become a very big point of interest when it comes to the EFF and its future, right? As everybody believes that he's one of those people who could be a really pivotal character going forward, because he seems to be the man of the future when you think about the EFF, in the way in which he's still as radical as Julius Mma, but not as abrasive. But I think the going is still early right now with him being banned, because I think that would be a very, very big test and a big question for Julius Mma going forward. If then somebody like Newzroom Nthoba can be banned from a people's assembly, then it might get really, really dangerous for what the EFF stands for and what it seeks to become in South Africa.
So as the EFF looks into going into the National People's Conference in next month and electing new leadership, and especially after what we've been seeing with regards to the exodus of some of the big guns within the party, what do you think should be their strategy now in terms of forging a way forward?
In every conference, there's some kind of rigging, some kind of, back and forth that might be not as straightforward as we think the democratic process should be. But I think in this instance, with the exodus of so many members from the EFF to the MK, the election of the EFF should be as open as possible, and also the discussions in their commission should be as open as possible, because now it seems like there is a hunt for dissenting voices, that those dissenting voices that might not necessarily always agree with Julius Mma might be on the outskirts of the conversations of the party. I think the strategy for the EFF now should be one that looks to be all-inclusive, like the ANC is all-inclusive, and at times to their detriment, but it keeps the party together because everybody had their fair chance, one, to run for an election, but secondly, everybody had a fair chance to have their voices heard as it pertains to policy positions of the party. And I think that going forward is going to be very important for the EFF, in order for them not to look like a party that just revolves around Julius Mma and his conception of what South African politics are. Even if it's just what the public is perceiving, that perception is hurting the EFF currently.
And with that perception, do you think that Julius Mma is concerned with regards to what that perception is, or what really matters to him at this point in time is bringing back the EFF to its glory days?
I think Julius Mma is really concerned, right? Because remember, all of these things have a sort of like a trickle-down effect and also like a dual threat effect, right? If you think about it, the exodus of big party hitters and party insiders is worrying also to the greater demographic of the party who are not clued into the higher structures of the party. And so the more of them leave and the more of them seem discontented, that would actually hurt the party in general, and not just Julius Malema's prospects of becoming president of South Africa. It seems that then, if this keeps going, the EFF is actually facing its cope moment, or its ahang moment, right, where everything starts to fall apart because in the leadership structures, there is no stability, but there's also no consensus of where the party is going. And that's what it seems like the members who are outside of the MK are saying, that it's now seeming like the EFF is rudderless in bringing economic emancipation to South Africans, which is their mission.
I mean, there are certain positions that would obviously be of not only the EFF's interest, but also public interest going into the People's Conference, and that obviously is that of Deputy President and SG that is currently held by Marshal Dlamini. Will we see players such as Mente Mautwe and now Godrich Gadi sort of keeping and maintaining the status quo with regards to the top positions and what they would possibly occupy?
I think that's going to be very, very interesting. And for me, I think a lot of people should be watching out, one, for the contestation of the president, but also the contestation of chair, since Dalimpofu is now out as well, who was the spiritual chair of the party anyway, even though the last time he couldn't get the threshold. Everybody still assumed that he held that position tightly or was very tightly knit with that position. The next one is Marshal Dlamini, because if you think about it, Marshal Dlamini is from KZN, right? And the reason why he ascended into power was because KZN was heavily punished by the leadership of the EFF before the People's Congress that he got elected into. And his going into the SG position was a political compromise. And now, since it seems like the KZN is totally lost to the EFF, what does happen to a Marshal Dlamini? But also, who emerges as a person who comes from a very strong province that is deeply loyal to the EFF? It's not Limpopo for certain. It might not be Free State, because none of the EFF members trust the current EFF members in the Free State, because they're all coming from a deeply embedded ANC position. And I think those contestations are going to be very important in determining who or what the EFF looks like in the future. Because I'm actually thinking that Mbuyiseni Ndlozi might not be gunning for deputy president. I think now it's an all or nothing position for those who are opposing Julius Mma. It's either you beat him or he beats you. But this middle ground that they were standing in order to keep him happy is not going to work for them or the EFF anymore. And I think that contestation that might arise between Mbuyiseni Ndlozi and Julius Mma might be very, very important in the future of the EFF.
And of course, in the EFF having to create some of the strategies going forward, they can't ignore the MK party. I mean, the MK party has now taken the position of being the third largest party in the country, given the last elections. And you spoke of KZN and the impact that the EFF had in that province, and now the MK party emerging in the way that it has. What sort of ways should the EFF be looking at in terms of making up for those lost numbers, especially during a time when many of their strong contenders within the EFF have now jumped ship to the MK party?
I think they must think about it in a very careful way, because the MK is not just positioned itself as the third biggest party or the third largest party in the country, but they've also now tried to position themselves as the great unifier of the left, right? This all-encompassing black hole that threatens to, one, swallow up the uncertain parties from the left, but also create an amalgamation of the left in order to bring the members of the left or the radical left inside the ANC closer to that left, right? And so that means if your party is shaky and goes into coalition with those left-leaning parties, and especially one that touts itself as a unifier, you might get swallowed up by that unifier. So if the EFF is not strong in its convictions of what it is as a party and what it's trying to achieve and why it was formed, it will easily be swallowed up by the EFF as a remnant of an ANC breakaway. Because if you think about it, the MK has been targeting the remnants of the ANC's breakaways, right? And they tried their very best to sort of coalesce with them and become close with them. And I think that is the ultimate goal that the MK is going for, and the ultimate goal that the EFF must try to stave off if it is to survive in the South African political landscape as we currently know them. But I think right now, parties as we currently know them in the South African landscape are not going to be the same as the parties that we're going to meet the next time we go to the ballot box. This government of national unity and the way it's shaping out, it's changing the parties and the landscape they play in a major way.
So speaking about the ballot box and just how things would possibly move in the future, and with the MK party and their stance in terms of bringing together like-mindedness with regards to making up their party, would ostracizing and leaving out Ndlozi be detrimental to the EFF, especially given the popularity that he enjoys, especially amongst the young people within that party, now going into the local elections and, of course, the 2029 elections? Could that hurt them at the ballot box?
Yes, right, because think about it. Throughout Julius Malema's political career, he's always known to be this shiesty figure when it comes to elections. It's always some weird thing that he won by. People took off their pants in Mangaung when he became president of the Youth League, and they counted the people who took off their pants as voting members, right? And so he's always got some kind of mechanism constitutionally that would land him before everybody else. He's a beast of the party that he's in. Now, the issue that he's facing right now is a much more different picture than he's ever faced before, because the question that he's facing is not if he can outsmart or outmaneuver his competition internally. Now the question is it that he's going to win because he's purging his political opponents within the party, or that the people who are opposing him see no room in that party for growth, so much so that they're willing to go and join with a former enemy, because that's what we must consider Jacob Zuma to be when it comes to the EFF members. He's a former enemy that they fought vociferously in parliament. And so Julius now is facing that kind of question, is that, are you now purging those who would challenge you? And what does that mean for you as a leader? Is it now the prophecy that you are the dictator that everybody has called you? Or are you going to allow people to actually run against you and we see you win in an outright fashion? And I think that question could be the maker or breaker of Julius's political career, and not just the EFF as a party, but Julius Malema as a leader in the country, because everybody has always sought to challenge his resolve whenever a big challenge comes. The big challenge came in the form of the MK in the election, and now it's coming internally for people who want that president of the EFF position. And I think that is going to show us who Julius Malema actually is.
It certainly is a very interesting time in politics. Thank you so much for your insights and for joining us this morning. That's politics commentator and lecturer at the Central University of Technology, Leeto Nthoba.